train to the Plastic Underground. Approaching the station, please stand away from the platform edge. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Plastic Underground office. We're doing something a little different this week. You know what's crazy is on June 8th, 1984, two movies came out on the same day. That is the original Gremlins and the original Ghostbusters. And that's pretty crazy. That would be a crazy time to go back to and do like a double feature. But yeah, so I wanted to make something for both of those movies, and I had this crazy idea, and I kind of drew up some sketches, and I decided like, hey, let's go for it. Let's make a Gizmo Ghostbuster. So that is what I'm making today, and this is a long video. This took me a long time. It's something that I don't do very often. It's a lot of like sculpting and clay sculpting, and I don't do a lot of that, so it took me a while. I ended up 3D printing a lot of the parts, Gizmo's head, and some of the Ghostbuster stuff, but everything else I hand sculpted and made the base and stuff out of some insulation foam. So I hope you stick around. I hope you watch the whole video. And I really hope you like the end result. It's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it. And yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so like I said, I only 3D printed a few things. I knew I did not want to sculpt Gizmo's head because I am not a good sculptor. So I found this little model and I sculpted out Gizmo's head and all of the Ghostbuster stuff. The proton pack, the walkie-talkie, the trap, the neutrino wand, all that good stuff. So there it is, all cleaned and off the printer. So now I'm just taking some aluminum foil and just kind of shaping that into what will be Gizmo's little body. Way too much foil, just so you know. I really thought it would compress more, but it didn't. So there's his body. It's a little bean shape. Just using some basic Sculpey clay here. And I'm just kind of smushing that on the tinfoil body. His body ends up being a little too long, but we'll get to that. So I kind of smush his head in on top. Use a little tool here just to kind of push it up into like his neck area, just to kind of make the seam a little smoother. Use a little pick tool here to kind of mimic the same type of hair that's on his head, just on his chest and around his neck, so you can see it under his uniform if you see it. So I cooked this clay way too long in the toaster oven because it's been a long time since I've used oven baked clay. So I just shaved off those air bubbles that burnt underneath, cut off the bottom, and added some legs. So yeah, his torso ended up being too long for kind of what I was going for, and so I just chopped it off, cut the foam off, and I just smushed on these little legs and just kind of smoothed it into the top part. This base is just kind of the form of what it needs to be, because we're gonna put clothes on them, so it doesn't have to be like super exact. But yeah, then I just made a couple little arms and just kind of stuck them in place here. use my little tool here just to kind of push and kind of weld these arms to the body, just to kind of get that seam looking pretty good and just kind of shaping the arms. You can see I also put a little curve to his arms, and I made this little hand out of clay, and I'll show you how I made the hand. Take a little ball, flatten it out, and cut two cuts into it to make 3 fingers. Gizmo only has a thumb and 2 fingers, so yeah, I just made a little hand like that. And I stick these to the neutrino wand here. I put the back hand holding the handle and the front kind of resting on the barrel. So I wanted to do this just to make sure that everything would line up. It would have been pretty unfortunate if I sculpted everything and then the wand didn't fit in his hands. So I got his arms kind of how I liked them, made the hands, and then I just put this in place and just kind of smushed the clay from his hands into the like wrist area. And add a little bit of hair to his forearms there, to his little wrists. Then I can kind of push in and smush his arms in a way where I like the way that he's holding the wand. Now, I've had clay crack, or I've had 3D prints crack in the toaster oven before, and it's probably not really great to put them in there. But this was so small that I put it in place just to kind of make sure that everything baked in place. And it worked out pretty good. You can also see I did not cook it too long because his arms were not burnt like everything else. So it worked out pretty good. Just using some of the same clay here, and I'm just smushing it all over his entire body. This will be his overalls. So I'm just kind of putting it in place, trying to cover everything and kind of reshape stuff. I put a couple little snakes on the top where his collar is going to be. And using that same tool, I put the seam down the middle for where the zipper is. And I also kind of used that tool to kind of push in some wrinkles and folds and stuff where like the uniform would kind of bunch up around the legs. And then I can smooth out the top here and make the collar kind of stick out. So the other thing I needed to do for his uniform here is I decided just to put a little snake of clay around his wrists. This will mimic the cuff of his sleeve. I kind of decided that his arms looked good enough that I did not need to skim coat that with clay. I figured that like those, since they're already smooth, it kind of looks like his uniform. But I just wanted to add the cuff at the end of his uniform. So yeah, I baked that all again, so it's all baked now. And I put this snake around his torso and flatten it out, and then go around and make sure that it's straight with my tool. I add some grooves in to the top to make it look like a textured belt. I add a couple little rings of clay to kind of be like the little buckles that go on the side, and kind of flatten those out. Next thing I do is I add a little snake of clay to his elbow area. These are going to be the straps that hold the elbow guards. Wow, what are they called? So yeah, you have like knee pads, and then these are elbow pads. Yeah, there you go. There's the word. So then I just add some clay to the elbows here, just to kind of build up that little area, and I kind of shape these little textured parts of the elbow pad. And I do the same thing with the strap that I did with the belt. I just kind of add some lines into it to make it look like it's got some texture and some folds. Then I make sure that I make another little hand that is the same size as his hand. And these will be his gloves. I realized that I could have really made this a lot easier by just making him have black gloves on. And I wouldn't have needed to sculpt the hair or any of that kind of stuff, but I did not. So then I realized that I have to give him gloves, so I made this little glove, made it look like it's stuck under his belt, and then I go around and I put this seam line all the way around to make it look like there are two gloves together, hanging in the same spot. Now I can go ahead and make his little boots. Kind of just take a ball of clay and kind of shape it, and make two of those about the same size. Kind of shape in some texture here where the laces would go. I debated on whether or not to make these like the tall boots that the uniform tucks into, but I ended up just kind of sticking them on the bottom and adding some snakes of clay around the cuff of his pants to make it look like his pants were on top of the boots. I didn't. His legs were too short and stubby, and I didn't want to make these tall boots. I think the Ghostbusters actually wear like tall, almost like almost knee-high boots, calf-high boots. So I did not do that, but it worked out pretty good. This is a little circle of clay here that I'm shaping and adding a little hole to. This is where that tube goes into the front of the pants. Everything's kind of scrunched on Gizmo because, you know, he's shorter. So everything kind of ends up being in the same spot, but that's all right. So everything's baked now and dried, so I go ahead and I paint his entire body with this tan color. This is a nice beige. And then I go ahead and I paint his belt with some white. And the straps on his elbow pads also get covered in white. I go ahead and I paint everything black. His little name badge is black. This is some gloss black paint. I paint his buckles. Paint his gloves, and then we also paint his boots this nice gloss black, and the elbow pads also get painted black since I already have it out. Then I can go ahead and paint all his equipment black, just give this all a gloss black coat. This is just a little piece of wire, and I'm just gluing that into the hole on the front there, and also glue that back part onto his belt. And then when it's all glued and dried, I go ahead and I paint that yellow. Now we can start on his actual head. So I'm just using some skin tone. This is like some peach skin. And to get his ears painted. and then his basically his like mouth and face and like eyelids all get the same color. And also his hands get painted that peach color as well. Then I got this like nice like nutmeg colored brown, and I'm painting all his fur. So you can see I paint the fur on his like wrists, and then I go through with his head, and then I paint all his fur this like nutmeg color. And also, I'm looking at reference images and stuff the whole time I'm painting, just to kind of see where he's got, you know, that white patch on the front of his face and everything too. So I take the white out and I paint his eyes white. Then with the same white, I go through and I do his little chin part is white. And that little spot around his right eye is also white. And his chest hair is white down the middle too, so I painted that chest hair that you can see. So then I got this other like brownish color here, and I'm just using that for his actual eyes. And I'm just going through and I'm just painting the irises of his eyes here. These are already like 3D sculpted on the model, so it made it a lot easier to paint those without, you know, kind of making it up. Taking a little bit of silver here, painting the front of the neutrino wand silver. And I glue this little tiny wire to the front to add that little wire piece. And then I go ahead and I go through the entire backpack and I glue in all these little wires to the backpack and try to make it look pretty accurate. And you know, it's really great because you don't see any of it because the backpack is facing the back wall of the diorama, but you know, it's there. So there you go. I glue the head on, put the neutrino wand in place. It's nice that this can be added now and like you can take the neutrino wand out of his hand and put it back in if you need to, which is nice for painting and all that kind of stuff. I glue his backpack on his back. You can see there's kind of a flat spot on his back for it to sit. I glue his walkie-talkie in place. And then the neutrino one needs a wire from the backpack, so I take this thicker gauge electrical wire and I glue that into place on the backpack and to the bottom of the wand. And then I'll paint that with some gloss black paint later on, so it's not blue. Just make everything kind of blend in together. A couple things on his backpack I needed to paint. Needed to paint these little light parts here. And I painted his name in red. This was hard, painting Gizmo on that little tiny area. Not as hard as freehand painting the Ghostbuster logo on his uniform. So I just kind of painted in white that little ghost logo, and then I just kind of reshaped it with red when I was going through and adding the red part there. You can kind of go through and redefine some of that area underneath, and then you can go over it with some black too to add like the facial details like his little mouth and his eyes. I do, and then I can kind of reshape everything with the black. Yeah, and then I go through with the same black and I paint his actual pupils. Again, those were already sculpted, so it was easy just to kind of dab those into the recess, which always makes it nice. I painted that tube like I told you, and I'm gluing on his little ghost trap. I just kind of painted yellow stripes on that off camera, and that's pretty much it for that. So now we can move on to the base. So this is just some insulation foam. I buy these at Lowe's or Home Depot. They actually sell like a hobby chunk. I think it's like 2 foot by 2 foot. It's like $7-8. It's pretty good deal. Instead of buying a full like $40 4x8 sheet of this stuff, works out pretty good. Last year, pretty good time if you're not doing like huge displays and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just kind of cut out this chunk here. I cut out this section here, which will be the road. And this sewer grate is 3D printed, but I traced that with a pen to get the shape of it. And I go ahead and use my blade here to cut that circle out just to kind of recess it. So that way the sewer cap there fits flush to the road. This is a storm drain section here that I'm just kind of cutting out a little hole. And basically that's like out of the curb area. And from the bottom, I do the same thing. I just kind of keep cutting away until that whole section is kind of open. I want you to be able to see down the drain, down into the sewer for you know, something maybe later on. I'm taking my ruler here and this sculpting tool and just kind of pressing in all of the saw cuts for the concrete sidewalk and the curb. I got this ball of aluminum foil and just rolling that over everything just to texture it. I use it on the corners too to soften the corners out, make them not such a sharp angle. Using that same sculpting tool, I'm going through and I'm just kind of picking and scraping away at some of the concrete to give it a chipped and worn out look. The sidewalks and stuff in the city are used pretty heavily, and you know, they get patched and fixed and stuff, but I wanted to give it a little character. So this is some plaster of Paris, and this is my cup of paint water, so it's not like weird green stuff I've been drinking. It's the paint water. So that's the water I use to rinse my brushes out, and just use that to add a little bit to the plaster of Paris, and then I brush that all on. This just kind of seals the foam. It also gives you this good texture for the overall display base, since this is supposed to be concrete and stuff. I sprinkle on some real thin like sand. This will kind of look like asphalt. That's kind of my plan. And I also kind of sprinkle it on the sidewalk to give it some texture too. I dump a lot of this plaster into the sewer cap hole and stick the sewer cap in place, and kind of go around the edge and just kind of clean the seam up of any overfill. Also take my brush here and I brush all this stuff in one direction. This makes it look like the concrete was finished with a broom. When you broom finish concrete, it pulls in one direction and kind of leaves this texture for sidewalks. So that's what I did. This is some cardstock. It is silver cardstock. I bought this for a different project. It didn't work, but it worked pretty good for this. So I cut this little square out. I bend it and fold it. This will end up being the sewer storm drain kind of cover thing. So I cut out that little middle section there. And now I'm cutting out the actual part where the water flows into. It's so funny, like there's like two things that come to mind when you're looking at sewer caps. So it's like the New York City sewer manhole cover is very much indicative of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And this storm drain thing here is very much all you can do is picture Pennywise on the other side of that storm drain. So it's just funny how those two things like are cemented in your brain from being a kid. But yeah, so I just kind of super glue those in place and just using this dark gray and just kind of dump that on there and brush that all into place. I just coat everything, make sure everything is uniform in color. Good, basically a primer, dark gray primer. Once that's painted gray too, you can really see all of the detail and texture from all the other steps. And everything is looking pretty good, so we can move on to the back wall, which is going to be a little pizza shop. It's going to be a pretty famous pizza shop down in the city called Ray's Pizza. I thought it was cool because it's an iconic pizza shop, but also it's very funny that Ray is a Ghostbuster. So I like that. I like that kind of double reference. So same type of insulation foam. I basically cut out this door in the side of the wall, and this is the other part here. So this is like the door is recessed into the wall. The front step here is getting a little concrete step here that goes up into this door. I'm just cutting that out and roughing it up with the tinfoil ball. Now, using that same cardstock, I cut out a few different thicknesses of strips. These are some pretty thin ones. These will be like the door trim. So the actual trim on the door. And I just glue these in place on both sides of the door. Get these trim pieces here. Then the bottom of the shop also has this trim around it, so I bend the end there so it fits around the corner, and that gets glued down on the bottom. The excess gets cut off and used for the other side of the door. Then this part here underneath the window also gets a little bit of trim. So same thing, bend the corner and glue that in place on both sides, this side of the door and the other side of the door. I glue the little step in place here. There's a little piece of plastic from some packaging stuff I have left over. I cut out the square, and that'll become my window to the pizza shop. I printed out this picture of a pizza shop, and I glue that to the back of this plastic. Painted this green, then I remembered that it's actually teal, but I also added a couple more little details there with some of that poster board. But then I painted it all teal. There's another little piece of cardstock I painted teal beforehand, and then I glue that to the window to kind of give it a separation. You can kind of see on my phone there the actual front of the store. It's kind of the look I'm going for here. I cut a little slit in the top of that window frame so that the plastic slides in there nicely, so I didn't have to glue it in place. So there is the wall and the base, and now all we need to do is do some finishing painting touches. So I paint this concrete step the same base gray color. The side of the building has a painted sign, so I paint it white first because it's red. So paint it white so that the red stands out better. Then I can paint this window black. If I would have thought about it a little better, I would have also cut this window out and put like a full pizza shop picture behind it that kind of matched. But that's alright. I took this little piece of wire, the same thickness as the neutrino wand wire, and just kind of pushed that into place here. Painted it gold to kind of match the original store. Has kind of this gold handle. Then I go ahead and paint that sign red. Now I give this street a black dry brush to kind of bring back that asphalt look, but also like only brand new asphalt is super black, and the streets are pretty worn out usually, so I paint that all black, let it dry. While it's drying, I give the cement sidewalk a really light gray dry brush. Kind of bring out those brush textures and all that kind of stuff. I kind of really apply that to the chipped areas. I use a different light gray to do the curbs here. Yeah, so I just kind of paint the whole curbs this different gray. Then I go over the asphalt with the same curb gray, and I just do a dry brush on top of that just to kind of make it look less dark and kind of more worn in areas. Now I can use this color, it's called Rusted Pipe, and I go through and I brush this all inside the manhole cover. These manhole covers I think are usually like steel. So kind of doing the same thing on the storm drain, just kind of painting it this brownish color. From what I see, all the storm drains are always like oxidized or always rusted, so that's kind of what I'm going for. This is some dark brown blackish wash. I'm just washing this on everything just to kind of darken stuff up and put some grease and grime and stuff in the textures of everything. Now I got these little scenic grasses here that I use for miniatures, and I'm just adding these to some cracks and kind of crevices where stuff would get stuck, and I just kind of like the idea of these little grasses, weeds growing out of the cracks in the sidewalk. Then I'm using some glue and just kind of going around in some places where debris and stuff would get stuck on the drain, and some corners of the sidewalk and that kind of stuff. And what I'm using here is, again, this is for my models, my little miniatures. These were like actual leaves that I got out of the backyard last fall. I dried them in the toaster oven, and then I kind of blended them together. And now I have this little sprink mix of leaves. And yeah, it kind of makes you look like a crazy person. My wife was going to put me in the institution, but I'm still here. So, yeah. You're going to look like a crazy person when you're doing crafts and stuff. And sometimes you do stuff and people that you know and love will say, "What are you doing?" And you have to say, you wouldn't even understand it if I explained it. So that's what happens. So, but I think it looks great. I mean, look how cool that looks. Little chunks of leaves stuck on the sewer grate, you know, where the water would stop and the you know, it would get stuck there on the grate. I think it looks great. Wow, how many times can I say great? That's good. Gluing the wall in place, adding some more leaves to the crack in the doorway. Hand painting the Ray's pizza sign. And then there's a little sign up here that's I forget what it was. It was like it was advertising that they have Italian ice, but I wrote on there Gizmo's Italian ice. And then I did some cursive with a paintbrush by hand. It's supposed to say famous original Ray's pizza. And he also has another little like crown logo on the thing that says Ray's. So yeah, my goal was to see how many times I could paint the word Ray's. This is like the little health sign that says that they are A+ business. Their standard is A for like cleanliness and all that kind of stuff. So that's good. And then again, here I go. I paint Ray's on the window. This is supposed to be like a neon sign in the window. So I just kind of paint that with red first. These are some little things on the door window that are kind of supposed to be like what cards they accept in the restaurant. And I'm just kind of barely just painting different colors on there just to kind of make it look like something is on there. I go over the Ray's sign with white to kind of make that neon look like neon. And that is it for the display base. And now we can glue Gizmobuster to the display base and finally be done with this project. I was so happy to glue him to the base and be done sculpting and adding detail and painting little details and all that kind of stuff. That I actually forgot a few things. Yeah, that's how excited I was to be done with this project. Is I forgot some stuff. So starting off, I'm using some model foam clay here. It's white, which is perfect. I spent so much time and energy on this thing that like I didn't want to mix up glue and baking soda and make like snowy texture like I've done for bases before to add the marshmallow bits. I wanted this to be something that I could take off if I wanted to. And the cool thing about this foam clay is once it dries, you theoretically can just pop it off of Gizmo and it stays in that shape, so you can kind of just like stick it back on and it'll like hold its shape. So that's kind of cool, and I ended up really loving the way it looks with the marshmallow that I have not taken it off yet. I think that's the thing that really cements this as Ghostbusters. Like that's, you know, it's the big ending, right? The big fighting the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and having marshmallow on everything. I think that's kind of pretty, you know, iconic. So yeah, that's what I did. And then I also realized, like, hey, what is holding his backpack on? Well, nothing was holding his backpack on but super glue. So I went through and used some really thin EVA foam, cut out these strips, glued a thin strip to the top of the other strip, and I mixed up this custom greenish military color. And then I go and glue these straps under his backpack. And then I wrap them around his arms and I cut off the extra. And then I glue them underneath the pack on the bottom. Yeah, so I do that for both sides. And while I was pushing this other side on, Gizmo became unglued from his base, which also made it a lot easier to do it. I took the wand off so I could put his stomach belt on for the backpack. These were old military backpacks, I believe, that have like the front brace and the actual metal back brace that the pack's like glued to. So yeah, so glued that on. Now he's got his straps, and now I can re-glue him to the base. And this time he is done. So that is it. That's how I made Gizmo Busters. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching. All right, you guys. So there you go. That is how I made the Gizmo Buster. Yeah, this came out pretty great. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the concept. I think it's pretty funny. I picture like the gremlins being, you know, like who he's fighting. And yeah, it was pretty fun. And yeah, I didn't know if I wanted to do the marshmallow, but kind of had to, you know. That's kind of the thing that like cements the first Ghostbusters movie, is that battle in the State Puff in Manhattan. So that is what I did. You know what's funny is June 16th, 1989, Ghostbusters 2 came out. So maybe we'll make a little bottom display for this guy and incorporate some of the stuff from Ghostbusters 2 in it. So I hope to see you then.
Ugh, that's one ugly dude.
Well, that's Vigo. Mr. Vigo! Viggs.